Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's live trading session and trade review session. As always, in these summer months, I'm prone to a bit of hay fever, so if I start sneezing uncontrollably in the middle of this, please excuse me. Markets have traded a little bit higher today. The equity markets were up around 30,625, 630 indicatively in terms of where the open is going to be for the New York markets. Gold is currently trading at its high of the day, or fairly close to its high of the day, and the euro and sterling have both traded off a little bit. The euro fairly tight to 105 again, whereas sterling is somewhere around 122.5 at this particular moment. So in terms of a live trade, I have a couple of trades that are open. One of them I went long the Dow a little while ago at 30,616, so I'm just looking or I have a take profit level in there at 30,636, just looking for a small return on there. Principally because I'm already long the market. That initial sell-off that we saw from about 30,720 down to where we currently are probably came a little bit quicker, a little bit earlier than I was expecting. And one of the themes that we've seen over the last number of days is, I often refer to it as spoofing, but there is a bit of downward pressure to the market around at this sort of time, and then we start to pick up just prior to the opening bell and see a better bid starting to come through. And I think that's probably not as as obvious today, but it is a similar pattern. As we traded off to about 30,660, maybe even a touch lower than that, and now we've rallied back to 30,630. So as I said, I have a TP level there, hopefully looking to trigger in the next few seconds or so, although it keeps flirting with it and not quite getting there. So I think we've been up to 634 is the high that I've seen since I entered the trade, and we continue to sort of flirt with that level but not quite get there up until this particular point. And we have about 6.5-7 minutes to go to the opening bell, so I'll continue to monitor that as we go forward. Hopefully that trade will trigger prior to the opening bell, which will leave me with one long Dow position that will run into the open. But we are seeing some degree of positivity, a bit of a sell-off overnight in terms of the market, and again a sell-off throughout the course of the day. Gold now trading at its high for today, up around 1837. Looks like it's going to trade 1838 fairly soon. One of the other themes, and just before I get on to that, I encourage you always to post your questions, and I'll do my best to answer those during the course of this session, or I'll revert to you after the end of this session. One of the other themes throughout this week so far, I think, has been the underperformance of the DAX. So one of the things I'm always conscious of is where the Dow is trading, where the DAX is trading, and how that fluctuates during the course of the week. So for me, I know that I am long DAX. I've been stopped out on one DAX position today. In looking to choose between the two particular markets, and I think the Dow trade just closed there. Probably didn't close at 636. I think it touched there, but then sold off a little bit. So let me just have a quick look and see what price the fill was at on that. Excuse me, I'm sniffing there a little bit. So we closed at 633, so not quite the level that I was looking for, but obviously it went up to 636, triggered, and the next best fill was 633. Sometimes it works in your favour, sometimes it works against you. It swings and roundabouts as far as I'm concerned. So gold at the moment is trading up towards its high. I know a few people last week were interested in where I thought gold was going from that time, so I'll just bring up the daily chart And so I think that I mentioned that 1842 was a key level. We did push above that and fell back fairly quickly below it as well. So gold is continuing with the degree of volatility that we've seen over the last number of weeks. I think if we push higher up to 1845 again, I'd be looking for some resistance at those levels. But we have broken through a few times, so it's not particularly strong resistance. I think the stronger resistance, just going to draw in a line here, but the stronger resistance is certainly coming through these particular areas. So it's not moving down for me at this time. I'll leave it there for the time. I'll just put the crosshairs in so that we can see what I'm looking at. Probably an easier way to look at it. So you can see the rallies on both sides here. Here back on the 8th of November, and then again more recently towards the beginning of June. The rallies have petered out around the 1877 line. So we're looking for a strong line or level of resistance at that particular point. I don't think necessarily we're going to see that over the next few days. The recession story, the rate increases, potential economic slowdown both in the US and around the globe continue to dominate what we're seeing in the markets, and I don't really see any let up in that story. Obviously the Fed meetings as we go through them through July and onwards, and the pace of those rate increases is going to become fairly critical, and it'll be interesting to see how the markets react to those. One of the things that people want to know more often than not is whether we are entering a recession. It certainly feels like it, but if you listen to the commentaries of Jerome Powell, Janet Yellen, and some of the other market officials that exist in the US, there is a belief that recession can be avoided, and the economy in the US is robust enough to withstand the rate increases that we're seeing at present. Obviously they are a disincentive to business, but certainly a disincentive to new business, but that is the way that we find ourselves at the moment, with inflation running as aggressively as it is at the moment. So we've seen a bit of a sell-off there in the last few minutes. So I'm just going to bring up the Dow on a 1 minute chart, and you can see that sell-off that I'm just talking about in the last couple of minutes, or in the last minute really. We've fallen there from about 30,000. So this is a 1 minute chart. So that candlestick is just 1 minute. We've fallen there from about 628 down to a low of about 591, and now we're picking up a little bit. So one of the reasons for that could have been a big sell order coming in that wasn't immediately matched and was given a bias to the downside, and now we're seeing some orders coming in potentially looking to take advantage of that sell order, which may have been at or slightly below the market, and that process is matching up a little bit. So below 600 I was going to be a buyer. I think for the time being I'll just wait for the opening bell. We're only about 30-40 seconds away from it now, and see how we move. So I might just put a bid in here at 30,578. So a little bit below the market, just seeing if we can catch a bit of movement as we move to the downside, and then after we finish this opening session, we'll look at the trades so far for this week and how a couple of those have reacted. So just to repeat, this is a 1 minute chart that we have on the screens as we get closer and closer to this opening bell. Little bit of fluctuation, and the market's open there, and we've moved to the upside. So we're hovering around that 30,600 level. I think we went up to about 780 yesterday. On the upside, it's quite an expansive range of movement yesterday. Probably down to as low, just look back at some of my trades, I think we went as low as 30,250 yesterday. Probably around 780 on the upside, so probably a range of 550 to 600 points or so. So my limit bid hasn't taken as yet. We got fairly close there on that last movement to the downside, but we've picked up a little bit here. So we went down to about 30,584. I think my limit was in at 578, so missed it just slightly there. Hopefully the other trades that I have on at the moment start to come into profit as we move a little bit higher. So we're fairly close to one of my other entry points, and I'm just going to try and close that trade. I can open my screens quick enough on my phone and try to take advantage of this movement that we've seen to the upside. So just closing that trade there. Well, unfortunately just missed it. So I'll keep an eye on that as we're still kind of around the entry point at this particular time. I think with the day and the week that I've had this week, I'm conscious that I want to keep risk fairly tight over the remainder of the trading week. So hopefully you all had opportunities to get out of that trade around 670. Unfortunately, I didn't have my phone open quick enough, and I'll continue to monitor that trade during the remainder of the afternoon. But you can see a nice movement there up to about 685, and we've come off fairly aggressively from those levels. So my limit bid is still in, and I'll continue to monitor that over the next short while. Just in terms of the other markets and how they're reacting, the DAX has sold off a little bit. We've been down to about 955. We're still trading around 965. So keeping an eye on that as well as we move forward. But I think there's only 2 positions open at this time. So, or I only have 2 positions open at this time. So nothing too much to worry about unless we see a significant movement to the downside. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to open up the trades for this week. So with one of those trades is now closed. So just the bottom one there, bought it at 30,616 and sold at 3633. So as it stands with the 2 trades open, just under 600 pips profit for the week so far. There's been a couple of nasty stops. I mean, today's stop at 13,000 in the DAX doesn't look particularly bad. The trade that upset me yesterday was the first trade that we see on Wednesday here, where the DAX and the DAX traded down to about 12,950, and the Dow traded down to 30,050. And was really fairly close to my stop levels at that particular time, but responded well, moved to the upside, and brought back into profit a lot of the trades that I had on. And as you can see, the majority of those were closed with a profit on. The trade that upset me most was the DAX, which did rally up to about 13,180, which would have been a 50 pip profit or thereabouts. But I moved the stop up to 13,065 from, I think it was 12,950 to start. And I moved the stop up a couple of times. And on that, just before that final rally, we had a bit of a move lower before we saw the surge higher. And it stopped me out before partaking in any of that particular rally. So equally so, just the one stop on Tuesday where I was short the Dow, and we saw a fairly significant rally to the upside, and I again stopped that out fairly close to the top of the market, and saw a couple of falls away from those particular levels. Which would have made the trade profitable or at least break even, but I didn't take advantage of those, and was ultimately stopped out with 179 pips worth of a loss. So I'm just going to close down the trades for the week. We're coming fairly close. We've got 3 or 4 minutes or so before we close this particular session. I don't see any questions coming through at the moment, but please, if you do have something you want to ask, or there's a particular trade that you want to talk about, then I'm happy to do that during this session or after. What I am going to do before I leave is just delete the pending order. It didn't trigger during this particular session. We've seen a lot of two-way flow between about 30,600 and 30,670. So I'm still hopeful of a move to the upside. I think the inflation story will start to settle down. I think Jerome Powell reiterated that we are going to see a couple of short, sharp rate increases over the next couple of months, and then there will be an evening out or a levelling out of that process, and by November the rate increases should be back to 25 basis points and nothing more than that. He remains confident that he will keep inflation under control, or it will hit under control is probably not the correct phrase, but it will hit their target level, and that they have the tools at their disposal to be able to do that, which principally refers to the rating increases that we are currently seeing in the marketplace. So we're fairly close back to one of my entry levels in the Dow. As I said, been pretty wrong with the market first thing this morning, and was fairly close to triggering stops as we got down to 12,950. Was reasonably happy to run into those levels. The Dow didn't quite hit the same sort of levels that it was hitting yesterday, and managed to circumnavigate, I suppose is the phrase, through that particular phase of the market, and return to profitability on pretty much all of the trades. So I'm going to keep things fairly tight this afternoon, not looking to add too many trades. I don't think that my timing is particularly good today, and I'm not as yet hitting the market at the most appropriate point, but there might be one or two more trades, but my first focus will be on closing down the couple of trades that I still have open, and as I said, one of those is fairly close to break even at this particular point. So I'll continue to update you on those trades during the remainder of this afternoon. There have been a couple of opportunities for you to take profit on those Dow trades whilst I've been talking. Hopefully some of you took those opportunities. Obviously I didn't, as I was talking to you during this session. But if we do see a move back up towards about 675, I'm not going to miss the opportunity on the next occasion. So thank you very much for joining me during this particular session. As I said, I will continue to monitor the trades during the remainder of the trading day. There may be one or two more trades, but it will be quite limited. And I will refer and revert to you throughout the course of the afternoon with any trading decisions that I make and any explanations around those. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I will speak to you during the remainder of today and tomorrow via Telegram. Thank you very much for joining me.